Hello everyone, welcome to lecture 6. In our course, we're going to talk today about markets and competition in the context of nudges and choice architecture. So far we've seen that people need a good nudge when choices have a delayed effect. Benefits now, costs later, costs now, benefits later. We all need nudges to bridge this gap. When we are faced with difficult or infrequent choices, for example, when we have choices that we don't do every often, we don't get a chance to learn, there's no feedback on a constant basis. That means buying a house, getting a mortgage, dating, choosing a college, and so on. When choices offer poor feedback, feedback is essential to learning. Therefore, if the circle of learning feedback is broken, then we will have to use some kind of nudges to get it back on track and get the best choices or best decision that we can possibly do. When the relation between choice and our experience is ambiguous, we don't know where to assign if that experience led to a certain choice, and we don't know how to assign the relation. So the question that we're trying to discuss in this lecture is, can free market solve people's problems and maybe eliminate the need for nudges? What is a free market? A free market is a system in which the prices for goods and services are set freely by consent between vendors and consumers, in which the laws and forces of supply and demand are free from any intervention by a government, price-setting monopoly, or other authority. So a free market is where buyers and sellers meet, they exchange goods or services, and not one buyer, not one seller has influence over pricing. They cannot influence the prices. There competition between sellers and buyers, and therefore the price cannot be set by any one of them. There are also no transaction cost and no friction in the free market. That's how we're considering to have a free market. In general, in these free markets, most of the time, competition ensures that price serves as a good signal of quality. It's our rule of thumb. If something costs a lot, then we assume that that service or good is of high quality, and vice versa. If something costs a little, then we assume that it's lower quality. It is not the best. It's still a rule of thumb, which is subjective to biases, as we all know. But as long as there's competition in the market, price will serve as a good proxy. So irrational consumers will be protected in these markets, in these free markets, as long as there's competition. There's one case that we can discuss is the case of warranty for small appliances, for example. Typically a bad deal for the consumer. A rule of thumb again is that warranties for small appliances are a bad deal. For example, a smartphone costs $200, free warranty for the first year, then you have to pay $20 for the second year for the warranty. Most people buy a new phone after 2 years. Is it worth it or not? Well, the chance of that the phone breaks in the second year is 1%. So you get $2 worth of benefit out of the $20 that you have purchased for the insurance. So therefore, we do not measure this as a good deal. Rational people do not buy this type of insurance, but others do, and maybe some of us have done it as well in the past. Why? Well, it's based on how System 1 reacts in that situation, in that moment, to different stimuli from outside. Some of the stimuli are friendly advice from the salesman. They are trying to paint a vivid picture of you breaking your phone, losing your contacts, all your memories, picture that you have, and so on, without taking into consideration the probability of that thing happening. Or that would lead you to mistakenly thinking that the phone will break 15% of the time in the second year, which would make the warranty at that moment beneficial. Or you simply go with the rule of thumb, better safe than sorry, right? Because it's easier to lock in the gain, being safe, than sorry and getting the loss. And if you think in terms of losses, obviously you're going to gamble on the losses and you're going with the better be safe than sorry. This is, again, an application of the value curve in the prospect theory. So how do the market forces intervene here, and what is the outcome? The type of extended warranty should not exist as a product. If people would realize that they pay $20 for $2 worth of benefits, they would not buy the insurance. It doesn't make any sense. However, companies do not enter the market to tell you, to advise you not to buy their product. So the insurance company obviously will want to sell you this extended warranty product, and if you don't realize it, if you don't make the logical calculation that you're paying a whole lot more for a small probability of the product that will break, then markets cannot do anything about it, right? So there's no such market for it in a way. So the general point is that if consumers have a less than fully functional belief, then firms have more incentive to cater to that belief rather to eradicate it. So, if they see that you believe in extended warranties, obviously there is someone to sell you that kind of product. Back to choice architecture. Look around you. Look around. You might be in the office and you look at the doors that are surrounding you. You might be in your home. Look at the door handles. There are certain things that happens in your mind when you're trying to open a door using that handle. As you approach the door, that design of the door will communicate something with you, right? It will tell you what to do with the handle. So the action is using the handle to open the door or close the door, and the design, the choice architecture, the design of the handle will tell you what to do with it. You will find out that some door handles are better designed than others. You might happen to have a vertical door handle, a horizontal door handle, simply a stainless steel plate on the door, a round knob, a handle that is like you want it to push or pull. All of this design will tell you how to handle it, right? There's a logical principle called stimulus response compatibility. So the signal that you receive from that design, you want it to be consistent with the desired action. For example, a vertical handle, a vertical round handle, what you're going to do with it? Well, the natural tendency is to pull. Obviously, you can push, but the natural tendency is to pull. It is much more natural to you. So on the stainless steel plates that you find commonly on the restrooms, you can only do one thing, and that is to push. So you can get in because that's what you want to, the design is telling you. If there's inconsistencies, we're going to make mistakes. So if the design is telling us one thing and we are doing the other thing or different action, then obviously there's an inconsistency between the design and the human perceived stimulus response, and it's not going to work. We're going to make mistake. We're going to try to push vertical door handles and pull horizontal and so on. And it happens a lot when we are designing for the form rather for the function, and you will see this around you going in different places of where the business will take you. So now that you know this, you'll probably pay more attention to how things are responding to your the stimuli that design is sending you and your corresponding action. This is a very ubiquitous stop sign that you see all over the place. It has a hexagonal shape. It's red and it has the letter stop on it. So no problem here. The way when I see it, I know that the stimuli that I receive from the design is consistent to my action, and that is for me to stop, pay attention, and proceed with caution. What happens if I make a little change here and I have this kind of sign? It doesn't exist. It's a fictional sign, but what you see now, you're a little bit confused. You don't know which stimuli to believe. Is it the red hexagonal shape, which I know it's telling me to stop, or is the word go, which is telling me to go? So I have conflicting notions on how to proceed, how to interpret the stimuli, the signal from the design, and I don't know what to do. Now, obviously, this is a fictional sign, but you will find this kind of confusing signals in designs all around you. The Stroop test. This is something that I would like you to take on your own. Go to that link and play with that. It's very interesting to see how we respond and the confusion that will create in your mind between System 1 and System 2. Back to our doors. Flat plates say push me, big handles say pull me. Do not expect people to push big handles. Choice architecture is not necessarily about products, it's about environments. And is to design environments to make it easy for people to take the desired action. We're talking about websites, website design. We're talking about online product design. Yes, we're talking about physical design too. We're talking about processes that we want to create to make it easy for people to go from point A to point B, and so on. This choice architecture is prevalent in many areas of your business and professional lives. It will be a failure of architecture, choice architecture, to accommodate basic principle of human technology. We are going to design for humans. We know humans make mistakes, so we have to account for that in our design. Some important nudges that we're going to go through. Defaults. Defaults is one of the most important nudges, and it has to do with the fact that we do not want to spend energy, effort. The brain is not very happy when we spend too much energy, and it would rather conserve it. The brain is a survival tool, and is more likely to use System 1 that doesn't consume any energy rather than System 2, which is very costly in terms of mental units. So people will take whatever option requires the least effort or the path of least resistance. If I could, between two paths of getting from point A to point B, getting the action that I want to do, I will always take the path that is easier. And you will find a lot of reasons why people do what they do. The response will be because it is easier than the other one. Choice A is better than choice B because it's easier. The status quo bias, which is the inertia or default bias, is what we are actually bringing here to this nudge. Defaults are ubiquitous and powerful and unavoidable. If you do nothing, nothing happens. Or we continue to do whatever it was we were doing before. So we're very inertia oriented. If I can do the same thing, I will. Changes are costly in terms of energy, and if I could avoid them, I will. Well, in certain situations, obviously, we need to plan for errors as well. If you're mowing your lawn, and something happens to you, heart attack, something, you are falling down, you let go of the machine, the design of the machine has to ensure that that machine doesn't do any further damage. Chainsaws as well. So to start the machine, I got to grip something, I got to push and have a grip on the handle to start it. That implies that as I'm doing it, I'm conscious and everything, but if something happens, when I let go, that machine has to stop. It's called a dead man switch. and it helps us a lot in our daily lives. We have this kind of defaults that if we don't do anything for a few minutes on our computer, the computer will lock down. The default for your magazine subscription is to auto-renew every month. And I bet you might have some of these lying around. And now that I remember you, you might go check your magazine to see which one you haven't seen in months, although you're still paying for it because of the default function of the automatic renewal. Business contracts are, from the business point of view, I rather have a contract that continuously renews each month or each year because, one, it's easier for both of us. It's easier for me to not go through all my contracts on a monthly basis, and it's easier for you so you don't have to renew your payment method every year. However, it's better for me and than for you because you might forget that we have this contract and I don't give you a chance to actually remind you that is it worth it or not, right? So it works well for both parties, but for the seller in this case might work better. Installing new software used to be very cumbersome thing. You have to select from many choices, which you have no idea how to, and then they came up with recommended settings. So you, as you install some software, you have three choices. One of them was highlighted, and it says recommended or suggested, and all you have to do is press next, next, next until the software was installed. So you created a default option, a yellow brick road, if you will, if you remember from previous lectures, where all you have to do is click next, which is the least amount of effort that you can possibly do, except let the automatic installation of software begin. Opt-in, opt-out, very strong defaults. We saw them in the first lecture when we were talking about the DMV forms with the organ donation. And opt-in, opt-out, they're very, very good when you're asking users to make a difficult decision, a decision that is hard to make, requires extra work. And what we do with that is we leave them alone. We leave the decision alone. So which means whatever the opt-in, opt-out box was asking us to do, we're leaving it alone. We're obviously pursuing that action, or we try to replace with a different, lighter, easier question. When you design anything, a choice, an environment, a product, anything, expect that people make errors. Some of the best products that I've seen, and I give this an example many, many times, is the iPad of Apple. A 2.5-year-old will take about a few minutes to figure out how the iPad works. Now that is perfect design. On the other hand, there are products out there that are they work beautifully, but they require a technical manual. And people are saying only if you go to page 294, the third paragraph from the bottom, you will find out the answer to this problem that you're having. And that is exactly the opposite that we're saying. You need to design for people that are busy. They expect errors. They are not using System 2 all the time, because we are not using System 2 all the time. We're using System 1. And that's why we have to design for. We know one thing for sure: humans make mistakes, but also we know that these mistakes are predictable and systematic. We all do them, and because we all do them in the same way, they are somewhat predictable. So a well-designed system expects its users to make errors and to be as forgiving as possible. Like the case in point is automobiles become friendlier, and they keep becoming friendlier over the years. You get the buzz now if your seatbelt is not on. The light is popping up on your dashboard when the gas is low. You got oil change warnings. The headlights are going on. They're turning on when the light is dim and off when the light is bright, and many others. Some are not so friendly. The gas cap is hard to maneuver. Sometimes it's connected to the machine, to the car. Sometimes it's not, so you might lose it. The ATMs have become better for some banks that now you're not going to be able to lose your ATM card so easily, because before you finish the action, so let's say the action was to take cash out of the ATM machine, that is the ultimate, the final goal. So before you finalize that goal, they prompt you to take the card out first, as opposed to how it was before. You take the cash and you forget the ATM card inside the machine. If you own a diesel car, you know that you're under constant threat of putting the gasoline in a diesel car, which will pretty much ruin your engine. So now they created nozzles that are different. The nozzles are different from gasoline to diesel, so you cannot put diesel into your gasoline car, and well, actually vice versa is more likely. You can put gasoline in your diesel car. Very useful when it comes down to drug compliance. When you're taking pills, every day is better than every other day, much easier to remember. System 1 is much more happy with creating a habit of taking a pill every day. But also, or once a week, Sunday is fine, because we associate it with certain week. Oh, it's Sunday, there must be pill time. Birth control pills. There was an issue, every day, you got to take them every day for 3 weeks, then skip 1 week. And this is a pattern that is more like System 2 than System 1. It's not a habit you can create. And how to fix the issue? Well, they actually create a pill for each day, but out of 4 weeks, 1 week was placebo pills. So therefore, you create a habit of taking 1 pill every day, and you don't have to skip any day, you don't have to think about it. System 1 will take care of it. Google is doing a great work in this nudges. If you're emailing someone and you're telling them that you're going to send them an attachment in the email and you're not, then Google reads it and they will nudge you. Did you forget something? And another way of doing it is if you haven't seen a reply from someone in a few days, 3 days usually, they are reminding you to follow up. And all you got to do is click dismiss nudge and they will go away. When you go to London, because we're coming from a country that drives on the right side of the road, and London is the opposite, they drive on the left side of the road, your System 1 is very used to, when you cross the street, to look to the left, right here. But then when you go to London, you have to look to the right, which you're not used to it, and then accidents happen. So they put a nudge on the bottom, on the road that says look right before you cross the street. So all this, we expect people to make mistakes, and we are controlling, we are actually getting ahead of the game and helping them avoid making mistakes that sometimes are very costly. It's important to give feedback, and this consists of a very strong nudge. The best way to improve performance is to receive and give feedback. This is how learning occurs. The learning curve, the learning cycle implies that we're learning something much quicker if we get feedback on it. Well-designed systems tell people when they're doing well and when they're making mistakes. So design systems communicate with humans how they're doing, right? And don't let them go on the wrong path for too long, which obviously is not human-centered design and creates a lot of frustration. Digital cameras provide feedback, small picture after you take the picture. However, that's not enough, because you are used to hear audible sound when you're taking the picture. So now they added some fake sound that kind of signals you that the picture was taken. It's not necessary to have the sound, but they added it so people get the feedback that they took the picture. Our laptops tell us when the battery is low, so we can charge it and not losing our work. And another interesting and funny way of providing nudges is when you're painting your ceiling, and the ceiling is usually white and you want to paint over. How do you know if you cover the entire area and not missed any spots? Well, they came up with this idea of white paint that is actually pink when you buy it. So when it's fresh and it's wet, it looks pink, and when it dries out, it's actually white. Therefore, you're seeing that you're covering the entire ceiling and not leaving any spots out. Incentives, very strong um, part of the choice architecture. Choice architect must think about incentives when designing systems. And here's some ideas how to go about it. You have to provide the right incentives to the right people. There are some questions that you need to ask, at least a few questions that you need to ask before you you figure out the audience and its incentives. Who uses the product? Who uses the service? Who chooses the service, the product, and so on? Who pays and who profits? These are at least 4 questions that you have to ask. Ideally, the answer to these questions is the same and the same audience, the same target audience, the same people. If it's not, then we have a little bit of a problem. Then we have to figure out different systems how to address that. So, for example, I give you an example. If you go with your kid to Toys R Us to buy a toy, who uses will be the kid. Who chooses will be the kid as well. Who pays? It will be me, the parent. And who profits? Well, this is debatable. It could be both of us because I take joy and pleasure watching the kid play with a toy, and he obviously takes pleasure by playing with the toy itself. So we have 2 audiences here: the parents and the kids, and then who is the one who's gonna win? It's hard to say. So we have to address these things and make them that both audiences are happy. What are my incentives as a parent? Well, the toy has to be educational, fun, safe, and for the kid, the incentives are they provide a lot of excitement. So we have to make sure that the incentives for these 2 audiences are aligned. Intervention, nudges, and decisions. So let's do a quick recap of our most powerful nudges in this case: pre-commitment and framing. Pre-commitment is something that we agree to do today for something in the future, and framing is we're asking the same question in 2 different ways. One posed as gains, one posed as losses, and we get 2 different answers because we know that risk-averse people will take a sure gain and they will gamble on losses. Pre-commitment, for example, I want you to take a look, go to YouTube and find out a video about Odysseus returning from the Trojan War when he passes by the Siren Island, right? So he makes a pre-commitment in the sense that he's asking his sailors to tie him to the mast and never doesn't and don't untie him no matter how much he begs, because he wanted to hear the siren song, which were deadly. And then for the sailors, he would ask them to put wax in their ears and row as hard as they can. So it was a pre-commitment made when in a logical phase, when with system 2 at the sea level, if you remember from into Thin Air movie, because we know that going into the battle when emotions are high, we're not going to be able to use system 2 as much, and we have to rely on system 1. So unless system 1 is trained and we took precautions to take care of the ascent of emotions in our decision making, then we will be in trouble. If you want to eat healthy and you're trying to avoid eating under system 1 influence, which is hunger, and system 1 doesn't care what you eat as long as you eat, and not only that, but also it goes for unhealthy food, if you remember the cake and salad experiment from lecture 1. How do I mitigate this? How do I pre-commit to eat healthy foods? Well, one way to do it is I can pre-order, so I can order from different places ahead of time. Usually if I order from Amazon, it will take 2 days, which allows me to order healthy snacks now after when I'm not hungry. There is a saying that says don't go grocery shopping when you're hungry, because there'll be all system 1 making decisions because you're hungry. System 2, as much as you will try, it will be over or influenced at least by system 1. So if you pre-order healthy foods from Amazon 2 days in in advance, then you're avoiding making decision with system one. And when the healthy snacks are coming, obviously you have a house full of healthy snacks. And when system one gets in, meaning that when you're hungry, you will have healthy snacks to chew on. So the idea is protect me for what I want. Who's we? Who's I? Well, in this case, it's system one. System one is the one with the emotion. I want cake, I want ice cream. So you got to protect me. System two, protect me from what I want. Framing is another, as you know by now, is another super powerful nudge. And literally, if you go to a museum, and maybe you should try this at least mentally, you go to a museum and let's say you see a painting by the old masters, which is huge with nice ornate wooden frame around it, right? One of the classics. So you can picture that this painting on the wall, and now picturing changing the frame from that old school type of frame, ornate with a lot of wood and a lot of intricacies, to a very slim, modern, black, simple black frame, right? How would that change your perception of the painting? Would it? So the idea is that this was an example to make you think literally about framing, but framing means that we can change and we can ask the same question in two different ways. One is losses, one is with gains, and we get two different answers. At least being aware of the framing effect, which is one of the powerful in behavior economics. So let's see what are our weapons of influence when we're trying to take some serious actions. And let's say we are trying to reduce fuel consumption in automobiles. How do we go about that? So how do we go about this, and what kind of weapons of influence we have at our disposal? We have 5 ways, 5 weapons: legislation, incentives, information, precommitment, and framing. 2 of them are from behavior economics. The other ones are legislation, incentive, and information. We can mandate, so first one is the legislation. We can mandate that manufacturers produce more efficient cars. So simply we issue a law that the manufacturers produce more efficient cars. And this is what happens in 2012 when the Obama administration issued a recommendation to increase the fuel efficiency standards to 54.5 miles per gallon by 2025. So we can do that. And it works, obviously. When you give a law, people have to obey it, and in practice that works. However, it does carry financial and political costs that we need to be aware of, and also interfere with free markets. Just issuing laws that go against the free will of the people, or the free markets, if you will. It's not necessarily very democratic, or it's more like panache of oligarchy or dictatorship. However, it does work. Then the second part is, how can we stimulate the purchase of more efficient cars? By incentivizing the consumer, right? So that happens. It also happened in the US. We get tax credits above $7,500 when we are purchasing an electric vehicle. And the idea is that we incentivize the consumers, will stimulate the demand, and in turn, more demand will influence what is being produced. However, incentives are expensive, especially financial incentives. It costs the government billions of dollars to implement, which is a loss of tax revenue. And if you remember, financial incentives have that little peculiar problem that when you stop the financial incentive, also the behavior will eventually revert. Information. We could send out information to everybody about the advantages of fuel-efficient cars, with facts of how much we spend on gasoline, facts on how the environment is affected, and so on. This is being done. the information is already out there. You and I, we both know how the electric cars are working and how much we spend on gasoline and how much the environment is being affected by electric cars. It doesn't help much, especially when we're challenging the source of information. But this information is out there from the manufacturers, from the salespeople at the dealership, and again, we tend to react negatively to unwanted information. So that's why spam doesn't work much. And if it seems that it's coming from a biased source, then we are kind of resisting it. How about pre-commitment? Pre-commitment is an interesting concept, and I'm going to start it off with a place where it actually worked very well in the retirement, in a 401k retirement plan. In the 401k retirement plan, it had a lot of success. It was brought in by Richard Taylor and Cass Sunstein in their book Nudge, and it has 3 steps. First step is we automatically enroll new employees in the 401k plan. So by the default action is automatic enrollment. Now, obviously, the employee can enroll anytime or change their enrollment at any time. But as we see, the default option is very, very strong, and more people don't. They stay with the program and don't get out. So that's step number 1. Step number 2, when we enroll these people, these employees in the 401k plan, we enroll them at 10% contribution rate. So the contribution rate is already set at 10%, and obviously it can be changed to any percentage. However, if you remember from anchoring, 10% is an anchor, and we tend to under adjust. So even if I want to lower my contribution rate, I'll never go down to 3% as is customary these days. I'll rather go down to 6 or 7%, which is I still perceive it as a change, but not as much, not as strong. So go down to 3%. So if you can agree, 6 and 7% is much better than 3%. And the third step in this automatic enrollment program was that anytime the employee gets a raise, that the contribution will also increase by a certain percentage, 0.25 or 0.5% or something like that. So it works really well in the 401k retirement plan, not as much in this situation when we're talking about fuel efficiency. It only works when it can be enforced. So we could ask people if they intend to buy a fuel efficient car, but we cannot ask them to pre-commit. In this case, pre-commitment is a little bit of a weak, is very weak, and we can just ask everyone. So the other problem, another solution that we might have is framing. Let's see if we can solve this problem by framing. In the US, we're talking about fuel efficiency. How efficient is the car? How many miles per gallon does it get? And obviously we want to be more efficient, but it's not as strong as, it doesn't hurt us. It's a gain rather than a loss. So let's see if we can maybe influence it to make it as a loss. So if we change it from miles per gallon, which suggests efficiency, to gallons per 100 miles, then we're changing from efficiency to fuel consumption. Consumption is a loss. So miles per gallon is fuel efficiency, gallons per 100 miles is fuel consumption, and then we can probably do something here. Let's give an example. What is more efficient, 50 miles per gallon or 100 miles per gallon? or consumes more, 14 miles per gallon versus 20 miles per gallon? Which one is better on improving efficiency? And if you said 50 to 100 miles per gallon, you were not right, because in a 100-mile trip, we're going to save 1 gallon for the first choice, but actually more than 2 gallons on the second choice. So when people try to figure out gasoline consumption and they get it all wrong, they overestimated the high end and underestimated the lower end. Okay, so if we change the framing to fuel consumption, then now we're actually facing losses. Consumption in this case is a loss, and um, we're going to be much better off if we're going to use gallons per 100 miles. The take-home message here is there's no single approach that always pushes people to work towards good decisions. So we have to use multiple nudges. It depends on the situation. And sometimes institutional intervention or incentive will be necessary, but sometimes, not often, information helps. And other times, the tools of behavior economics, pre-commitment, and framing can shape choices. Let's consider using information because it's the easiest to think about. Information is fact describing the outcome of any particular decision. For example, if you want to discourage teenagers from using drugs as cocaine, you could tell them that, well, cocaine use impairs long-term memory, increasing the risk of heart attack and stroke, and impairs daily decision making. Cocaine users have financial difficulties and fewer close friends. And what would be the outcome here if you give this information to teenagers? Nothing. The teenagers don't care. They will simply ignore you. So giving people information about the outcome of their potential decision rarely helps, especially in isolation. So people mistrust information. They try to figure out what you are not telling them, and they mentally argue against the information provided. Often our biases affect us before we even thinking of making a decision. We often seek information consistent with our point of view, see the confirmation bias. Another strong one is the halo effect. Nudges. We can use nudges when other ways fail to get the results. Nudges are gentle pushes, so people move themselves in the right direction like it was their decision. You're not forcing them to do anything. You're just simply silently suggesting different ways of getting to make the right decision. To make 4 nudges effective, there are 4 basic steps. You identify some social issue that can be linked to poor decision making. Find the manipulation that changes what people can choose, the way outcomes are described, or the manner in which people make their decision. Introduce manipulation without telling people about it. Must track people behavior and adapt your manipulation to reach the desired effect. Now, these are important to follow. Nudges are helpful, they're silent, they guide the people towards the right decision. They're used to be together. One nudge is usually weak because it is a soft push, and they work in packs of nudges, if you will. Sometimes they fail. And why would they fail? 2 main reasons. Based on defaults. Strong antecedent preferences on the part of the chooser. If I believe strongly about something, it's hard to use nudges to change my opinion. And there are successful counter nudges which persuade people to choose in a way that confounds the effect of choice architects. So there are other counter nudges present that you may be not aware of, the choice architecture, because you don't know all the incentives of the audience, which can actually backfire in a way. Nudges might be ineffective for 5 other reasons. Some nudges could produce confusion in the target audience. So if the nudges are confusing, they're not clear enough, no salient enough, they will confuse the target audience. Some nudges might have short-term effect. Some nudges can produce reactance, which is rare, but it could happen, it could backfire. Some nudges are based on inaccurate, but initially plausible understanding on the part of choice architects of what kinds of choice architecture will move people in particular context. And some nudges can produce compensating behavior, so positive pressure and negative pressure, behavior pressures, that can result in no net effect. When a nudge turns out to be insufficiently effective, choice architects have 3 potential responses. Do nothing, let the nudge go through. Nudge better or different, or fortify the effect of the nudge, perhaps through counter nudges, or perhaps through incentives, mandates, or bans. In conclusion, nudge choice architecture is all about nudging people to do the right action, and the nudges are silent. They're powerful, but not strong enough on their own. They have to be packed in certain situations with multiple nudges and multiple other tools of behavior economics. So this lecture is actually giving you the reason why nudges work, when they don't work, and what can you do when they fail. Thank you so much.